The state of Florida could completely eliminate property taxes, and though that sounds like a fantastic idea to me, after I dug into some of these things, I realized that it may not be the best idea for all of Floridians. Florida could eliminate the property taxes, but they need to get that tax revenue from somewhere. So that could raise our sales taxes and make it double, which would affect a lot of Floridians, and some of the poorest Floridians here are going to be hit the hardest. What's up, everyone? It's Thomas with Real Broker here in St. Augustine, Florida. And if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest here in northeastern Florida or within the entire state of Florida, make sure you reach out to me and my team. Though we don't cover the entire state of Florida, we know a ton of great agents throughout the state. So if you are looking in a certain area, we could help you out. Or if you're looking here in northeastern Florida, we'd love to help you out as well. So in today's video, what I want to do is first cover what is the tax setup for the state of Florida. I then want to cover what would it look like? Where is the revenue going to come from for the property taxes that could potentially be going away, and where we're going to find that money otherwise. Then we're also going to talk about the different classes that are going to be affected by this. We're talking lower class, middle class, and upper class in terms of their financial stability. And then we're also going to talk about what it looks like for the state of Florida in terms of like who wins, who loses when it comes down to getting rid of property taxes altogether. So the reason that property taxes have been proposed to be eliminated is because that the state of Florida has an affordability issue. And a lot of that comes down to the insurance crisis that we've had across the state, but also we've seen property prices go up 60% across the entire state of Florida since the pandemic, which was only 5 years ago. So Governor DeSantis is looking for ways to make it a little bit cheaper and a little bit more attractive for people to stay here in the state of Florida. And one of the things he's proposing is to get rid of property taxes altogether. I do also have another video about the insurance crisis here in the state of Florida where I outline everything just like I'm doing here with property taxes to give you a full 360 view of what's going on here so you can have a handle on it and make the best decision possible. So let's start and dive into the first one, which is Florida's tax setup. So as many of you know, Florida has no state income tax, and that's why a lot of people are drawn to our state, because they don't want to be taxed on their income, and it actually saves them a good of money, or actually just gives them back a good bit of money that other states would have taxed them on. But aside from that, we do also have the homestead exemption here in the state of Florida, which is for property tax, which essentially means that if you are a primary owner, you can qualify for the homestead exemption that will reduce your taxable value by $50,000, and it'll also cap you at a 3% raise year over year. That's the max that they can raise your property taxes every single year, which is a big benefit for a lot of people that are on a fixed income. Property tax is the primary source for funding for schools and local government here in the state of Florida, and the total property tax revenue is at $25 billion, which is a huge number to just wipe off the table altogether. Now, another factor in this equation is going to be the sales tax for the entire state. Now, the state of Florida has a 6% sales tax, but every county can add on a sales tax for the specific county in general. Just to give you an example, here in St. Johns County, we have a half-cent sales tax. So if you're looking to buy something here within the entire county, it's going to be 6.5% added on to your sales tax. That's a little bit different than other places. There's some places in the state of Florida that are high as 8%, and there's some places that don't have any added sales tax at all. Just to give you an idea, just north of us, Duval County has a 7% sales tax. So buying anything in Duval County is going to cost you a little bit more money than it would here in St. Johns County. So the proposal from Ron DeSantis is to get rid of property taxes altogether, which what I just covered is about $25 billion of revenue for the state of Florida. So if you're familiar with government at all, we know that they're going to get that money from somewhere. Where is it going to come from? And the next thing to look at is going to be sales tax. We already covered that, like, hey, the local government and the schools are funded by property taxes. So if we get rid of those, are we just going to let these schools and governments just go and, hey, figure it out? You'll get the money somehow? No, we're going to figure out how to pay for these things outside of property taxes. And the only way that I can think of, and the only way that has been proposed, is through a sales tax. So like I just covered, the sales tax for the entire state of Florida is 6%, and that adds about $33 billion to the state of Florida's revenue every single year. So in reality, sales tax would actually need to double in order to cover the $25 billion loss of revenue that we would have if we were to eliminate property taxes. And I don't need to tell you, it's basic math. That is a huge gap to jump in order to make up for that. So based on Florida's total consumer spending, which is about $550 billion, a 12% sales tax would be the thing that would replace that $25 billion that we lose from property taxes. But Does it make sense? And does it make sense for everyone? So what I did is I put it into a chart and I tried to make the most sense of possible of this so that it's really digestible for everyone out there and to see what the implications are of eliminating property taxes and who's affected the most. Let's take a look. So as you can see, we broke it down by household, current tax, future tax, and the difference. And when you look at it like this, the renters, they're always going to lose because at the end of the day, they were never paying for property tax. Yeah, of course, they were paying for rent, but their property taxes were paid by the landlord, right? It wasn't paid by the renter. So when you take a look at the renter, at a 40K household income for a renter, you have a current tax of $1170, which is going to be just the sales tax that they're paying. And the future tax, if it were to double, would be $2160. So they would actually lose money in this scenario. It would be more expensive for them to live here in the state of Florida. So no matter what equation I'm going to run here, the renter is going to lose out all day long because at the end of the day, they're not paying property taxes anyway. The landlord that they're renting from is paying property taxes. So let's take a look at the 100K household income and see how that plays out. So you can see with a 100K homeowner, you have a $5,822 current tax. If they were to get rid of property taxes, now we're including property taxes and we're also including sales tax, you're going to see that the future tax for them is going to be $4,200. So it's going to save them about $1,622 a year if they're completely eliminating property taxes and having that 12% sales tax double on them. But the people who benefit the most, and no surprise here, is going to be the wealthiest of the individuals. Now, most people, as their pay starts to go up and up, the amount of money that they spend from their income starts to decrease as a percentage. So for example, if you're a lower income household, 90% of your income is going to be spent on expenses. Now we're talking about living expenses, we're talking about sales tax, we're talking about everything. And it's just because they just don't have as much money to stretch as far. Once you start making over $100,000 and your expenses don't increase with a lifestyle lift, then you're going to be able to take a lot more money and be able to put it away for investments, to save it as a little bit of a nest egg. The people in the lower income bracket, they don't have that choice. They got to use all their money for all their expenses. So when we take a look at the 250K household income, you'll see a huge disparity. And these are the people that are really going to win out if property taxes were to get eliminated. So you can see their current tax is going to be about $12,000. And you can say their future tax is going to be about $6,000 based on their regular spending. So in general, they're going to save about $6,000 a year in this change of property taxes and going towards a sales tax model. The real loser here is going to be anyone who is making under $30,000 a year as a homeowner, just going to cost them more money because at the end of the day, they don't have that much money to spend. And then you're also going to have the renters who they never pay property tax. So all day long, they're losing because they're not getting any of the incentives that we're seeing here. So this is really an incentive geared only towards homeowners, and it's only going to benefit homeowners. I don't see, someone could make the argument and say, hey, you know what? They're not paying property taxes anymore, so my rent should be lower. Well, you could make that argument all day long, but why would me as a landlord, why would I want to lower the rent? Like, why don't I just keep it the same with the market? Doesn't make good sense here, right? So, and as we know, and we're talking about tariffs and everything, the prices aren't going to be reflected, to the company. The company's not going to eat the profits. They're going to pass it on to the consumer. So the one thing I was concerned about is this is going to hurt homeowners as well, right? We talked about renters. Renters are going to lose all day long, right? But the homeowners here in the state of Florida that make under $30,000, they're also going to lose as well. It's not going to be a benefit for them because at the end of the day, they're going to be, really where they're at in terms of what they're paying in property taxes and what they could potentially pay at a 12% sales tax rate. It's going to be really like a net negative for them. It's not going to be a huge amount, but they're not going to win or lose. It's going to pretty much flatten out. Once you get over $30,000 a year of household income, that's where you start to see a little bit more benefit. But even when I showed you $100,000 a year, they're only benefiting about $1,000, which if you're making 100 grand, that's 1% of your income. So is that a good thing? Hey, it's better than losing 1% of your income. But at the end of the day, it's not going to make a noticeable difference for most homeowners here in the state of Florida. But it does also then incentivize people to say, hey, you know what? This isn't a renter-friendly state because of what's happening here. I may as well buy a home because I'm going to get these benefits of not paying property taxes and lowering my costs overall. Because renters, at the end of the day, they're never going to benefit from the situation. The people that are going to benefit from this are going to be the high income earners because as a percentage of their total income, they're not spending nearly as much of a percentage as someone who makes $30,000 a year, who's probably spending all $30,000 every single year. You make $250,000 a year, you're more than likely probably spending let's say, a third of your income. So let's say you're spending $100,000 a year, you still have $150,000 of play money to kind of make yourself very comfortable. So here's where the big problem comes in is, yeah, it could be an incentive for renters to buy, or it could also be a barrier because their costs in terms of just being a renter in the area makes it that much harder to be able to save money to be able to afford to buy a home because your costs have just gone up based on the sales tax. So let's take a look at the entire state of Florida and let's talk about who is going to be affected and who's going to benefit from the situation. So if you look at the entire population of Florida, we have about 22 million people that live here in the state, and about 67% of them are going to be homeowners. That's 14.5 million people that could benefit potentially from property tax going away and sales tax being increased in terms of like what their household income, mostly going to benefit the majority of those homeowners there. But we have about 7.5 million people who are just renters here in the state who are going to get the shaft because at the end of the day, they're never benefiting from not paying property taxes. On top of that 7.5 million people, we have about 1.1 million people who are low income households, right? So that's probably included with the renters, included with the homeowners as well. So let's just say it's about 8 million people who are low income households and also renting at the same time. And I don't have the exact data on that, but just assuming, splitting the difference, we have about 8 million people that are going to be affected and their costs are 100% going to go up. And we already knew that the disparity between homeowners and renters in terms of net worth is huge. Like the average homeowner has like $200,000 of net worth versus like the average renter has like $1,000 of net worth now. And we already knew that, right? The disparity of wealth between homeowners and renters is vast. When you're looking at the net worth of a homeowner on average across the United States, their net worth is around $255,000. When you're looking at a renter, their net worth is about $6,300. So there is a huge difference between renters and homeowners in this country in terms of their wealth. And this will push that even further for those renters. The homeowners will more than likely benefit. That net worth will probably go up because people will also be attracted to not paying property taxes. They'll want to move to Florida because of that reason. The renters are going to be stuck in the same place unless they make the leap over to home ownership. And that's a big, big concern, especially for the poorest of Americans here in the state of Florida, the poorest of Floridians. So is this plan to eliminate property taxes a good idea? Personally, I think it's a great idea just because I hate the idea of paying tax to the government every single year on something that I purchased, right? It just doesn't make good sense. When you buy a car, you don't pay taxes on that every single year. You pay insurance, of course, which in a form is a way of a tax, or one renting it in that regard. But essentially, and that's one of the things that Governor DeSantis outlined, is when you're paying property taxes, even if you own the property outright, you don't have a mortgage on it, you're paying taxes, so you're essentially renting your home back from the government, or at least that parcel of land. Does that make good sense? Now, I'm not arguing that, as our current setup, we would have some big problems when it comes to funding the local government and the schools. But at the end of the day, I do know that the tax money will come from somewhere, and I know sales tax will probably be raised in comparison to make up that gap. But a lot of people see property taxes as a progressive tax, whereas when you're looking at just a sales tax, that's technically a regressive tax because it affects the lower income people a lot more than it affects the higher income people. As I said before, lower income households spend about 90% of their income, whereas wealthier households spend about 50 to 60% of their income, and they put everything else in a nest egg and they save it or invest it. So they're going to benefit all day long. And as people grow their wealth even more, spending pretty much levels off between the $100,000 to $150,000 range. So once you get above that, it's just more and more benefits. And we only covered up to $250,000. So you have households that make $500,000, $1 million a year within the state of Florida. They're benefiting like crazy. So at the end of the day, what's the right thing to do? I'd love to know what you guys think about this. Mathematically, it checks out for homeowners, right? It makes sense for the majority of homeowners to get rid of property taxes and to increase the sales taxes by double, right? But does it make good sense? Is it the best for all the people here in Florida and all Floridians? That's a hard question to answer. What do you guys think about this? Do you think a 12% sales tax would just be too much of a burden on the poorest Floridians that we have here? Or do you think that overall it would be a net benefit for all Floridians? Let me know in the comments below. So this property tax bill could happen or it could not happen. I don't know. It's going to be pushed forward here. We'll see what happens here in the future, but I just wanted to make sure I dove into it, just put all the information out there for you guys. But as of right now, there is another bill that's being pushed forward by Governor DeSantis to give every Florida homeowner a $1,000 rebate on their property taxes. And I think they're trying to push that for this year or for 2026. We'll see what happens if it gets pushed forward or not. But ultimately, I think what they're trying to do is maybe a little bit of posturing, saying, hey, I'm trying to help, and they don't expect a lot of these things to go forward. We'll see. And guys, since you've made it this far, if you have gotten some value out of this video, make sure you tap that subscribe button below, like the video, or hit the notification bell if you want to make sure that you stay up to date on everything going on here in the state of Florida or the city of St. Augustine.